One of the most exciting new blockchains just launched last month, and I'm betting that it's setting up to be something massive here. And that project is Celestia, which is building a modular blockchain. And I think that Celestia could just be the Solana of this bull run. And that's because I'm seeing a lot of similarities. When Solana first went live, it really was this new groundbreaking technology, a new blockchain that was able to achieve such an incredibly high transactions per second that we hadn't previously seen. And even though over the past few years we've seen a ton of different layer ones launch, really nothing is quite like Celestia that's truly pushing the technology forward with this idea of really creating this kind of modular blockchain. Kind of you can even think of like Legos being put together. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. I am Crypto with Nick, and I am always focusing on sharing the latest DeFi strategies and altcoin gems. Today, we're talking about everything you need to know about Celestia and why I'm betting big on it. Be sure to check the links below. Come follow me on Twitter. I'm always sharing other altcoin gems that I'm interested in, like Chainflip. And of course, come join the completely free community Discord. But let's get into today's video. Let's first talk about what is Celestia, because Celestia is really not just another layer one blockchain, and it really wouldn't even be accurate to describe it like that. Celestia really focuses on this idea of modularity and data availability, but even that is kind of like a lot of buzzwords. So what does that even really mean? The best way to understand Celestia and the value that it's bringing is to really take a look at existing blockchains today, because they operate with this monolithic architecture. When you look at something like Ethereum or many other blockchains, right, they all share in the same consensus, usually proof of stake and execution layer. And for example, they can only run one type of language, which is Solidity. And if you've ever talked with a developer, you would know writing smart contracts in Solidity is an absolute nightmare. Then you saw other blockchains like Solana, which offered Rust as a programming language, or Aptos, which uses the Move programming language. And this really helped with kind of smart contract development in terms of ease and interoperability and being able to bring new applications to DeFi. And even though we're iterating on things like consensus and programming languages, you still kind of get stuck with this single monolithic stack where everyone on that ecosystem has to operate within the same bounds. And if we go ahead and look at this picture, we can now look at Celestia, like I said, kind of like Legos or building blocks. And you can go ahead and separate out these layers, right? Making each component modular. And now anyone can launch a blockchain, right? Separating out these components and, for example, picking an execution layer that they desire, whether that's the Ethereum EVM, Solana, or the Cosmos SDK. And what this gives us is an opportunity to empower people here, so that way they can pick the best components of what they like and put it together in a stack that makes the most sense for the goals that they're trying to achieve. And if you're someone who really loves to deep dive into the technicals to truly understand how are things working behind the scenes, I'm going to recommend Gogo's Diego's YouTube video. He has some great animations that make it easy to follow, even if you're not that technical. Next, let's meet the team, because the CEO of Celestia Labs, Mustafa Al-Bassam, truly has a unique backstory here. And you can see he did get his PhD in blockchain scaling. He also co-founded a company called Chainspace, which was acquired by Facebook. But that's not the first time I heard Mustafa's name, because I remember back in the day, he was actually part of the LawSec hacker group. You can see back in 2016, when this article came out, he was actually sentenced to 20 months in prison for these exploits and crimes of computer misuse. And you can see he was involved in some pretty high profile hacks like the FBI, Fox.com, and even Sony. Now, rather than Mustafa hacking to just enrich himself and, let's say, run off with the money, he really viewed himself as part of more of a hacktivism kind of group. And we've seen this before, where sometimes the legal system truly just has their hands tied, and these hacktivism groups try to step up and shine a spotlight on the truth. Even with all that, of course, he became incredibly successful, right? Really focusing on scaling blockchains, right? We talked about him co-founding Chainspace, which was acquired by Facebook and ultimately became part of that Libra project. And as he moves on to the next thing, we can see here in 2021, Celestia went ahead and they closed their seed round of funding, right? $1.5 million from people such as Interchain, Binance, Maven, KR1, and a few others. And then again in 2022, they raised another $55 million by some of the world's best venture capital to, of course, go forward with this vision of this modular blockchain. And this just provides a good overview from the block, which kind of breaks down the private funding. Again, beginning of the seed round, we had about 1.5 million from some pretty notable venture capital and firms. And then, of course, the 55 million, which is split between the 10 million and the 45. That gets us to 55 million. And we can see, again, it has everyone from Coinbase Ventures, Polychain Capital, Jump, right? So some definitely heavy hitters in this industry. So now in the private markets, we have Celestia being valued at about $1 billion, which we can assume is fully diluted at this point. Fully diluted is a meme, and that's because you often aren't going to see that full circulating supply, sometimes for 8, 10 plus years. And so what you really have to focus on is what unlocks are imminent, or at least within the next 12 to 24 months that could affect any kind of thesis that you're building here. Celestia trades at about $8.77, so this puts it around a $1.3 billion market cap, a little bit lower than something like Arbitrum, and it has a fully diluted right now of about 8.8 billion. So one of the things I want to quickly talk about is the Genesis airdrop, because I think this plays a huge part in the thesis as well as the price action going forward. Unfortunately, if you did not claim your airdrop yet, it is too late, but I think it's an important part because Celestia airdrop tokens and was claimed by about 580,000 users. And Celestia is following the playbook to creating one of the strongest communities, right? Airdropping token to 600,000 users. They launched with fair tokenomics, and now we're seeing that reflective in the price action, which of course is mobilizing this incredibly large user base that's now excited about the project. And since this token launched, right, early November, we can see here it had a few days of consolidation, right, as early airdroppers went ahead and sold their tokens and some buyers stepped in, right? We could see it's a little bit of a back and forth battle here. But after that was over, I mean, this thing has been on a tear, and I'm betting to have significantly more upside. This is something I'm looking to hold right through the bull run. I've even went ahead and staked my tokens to get about 20% APR, and even though it has a 21-day unlock, I'm not too concerned because I'm really looking at this as a long-term hold. And if you want to join me trading on BitGet, I have a link below you can check out. We've seen a lot of projects launch with terrible tokenomics, and of course the price action suffers, but I think TIA tokenomics are really the sweet spot, so I want to dive into those next. We can see here, of course, the tokens TIA, and there's about 1 billion minted at Genesis, right? It does have about 8% inflation, but that does decrease 10% per year until it hits about 1.5% annually. So they already have a game plan in place. And it looks something like this. Of course, year 0 is at its highest, right? And then we see it gradually decrease over time. And we can get a complete picture here, right? So 7.6% was part of that Genesis airdrop I talked about, but they also have another 12.6% for future initiatives. So this could be things similar to Arbitrum or Optimism's proposal, or perhaps more airdrops in the future. Next, we have the team taking about 20%, right? The initial core contributors. Then what we have is people who got in early on that seed round, right? Raising that 1.5 million. They represent about 16%. And then the investors that came at later stages have about 20%. And finally, of course, what you'll see is 30% dedicated to the R&D and the development of the ecosystem. And what you see here is for the first entire year, you're not going to see any unlocks or inflations from the core team or from venture capital or any of the early investors, right? It's only what's currently circulating. I think the schedule actually fits perfectly into the anticipation of the upcoming bull run, right? As we look at things now, in my opinion, the bull run has begun and we have started to lift off. So going into 2024, I'm really expecting things to ramp up, and not having any of these VCs or big unlocks for a year, I think fits perfectly. And of course, with your Celestia, you can go ahead and stake it just like any other token on the Cosmos. And right now the APR is over 17%, which is wild because inflation is only going to be about 8% of that. If you're looking to stake with the validator, be careful. Make sure you do not choose one with 100% commissions, right? They are effectively taking all of your staking rewards. So honestly, there's a lot of good choices here. There's even Coinbase who went ahead and launched their own validator for Celestia, which was great to see. They charge about 10%, which is the average, but you can find a few 5% if you do trust that validator. Now, the last thing to talk about is really what can you do on Celestia right now other than maybe staking it. And we can kind of take a look at the Celestia ecosystem. We have to remember that Celestia's mainnet just went live a month ago. And while a lot of projects were building on testnet, not a lot of time has passed since, really allowing these projects to redeploy and transition onto the mainnet to fully productize their service. A lot of these are more on the infrastructure side, things like settlement layer, but it's really cool to see things like Neutron and Berachain, as well as rollups as a service or different rollup frameworks like even OP Stack. Of course, we do have some DeFi projects here that are looking to build, as well as some gaming ones to look forward to. And if you just go to Celestia's site and you click on the ecosystem tab, you can go ahead and scroll down to a bunch of different projects. You can click on something like DeFi. You can go ahead and click on the projects. It will pull open the Twitter for you, and you can explore and see what this project's doing, where it's at, and when it's looking to go live. And if you're wondering how bullish I am on TIA, I wrote this tweet November 1st when the token dropped. Sell me all your TIA at 270. And I'm looking forward to reposting this tweet when TIA is $10, $20, $100. And that is what I'll be looking for in the bull run. That wraps it up. Check some links below. Again, come join completely free community Discord. And do me a favor, if you have a project you're bullish on, drop a comment below. I'm always looking for new things to research and make content about. So again, hit that like button, subscribe. See you in the next one.